All right, welcome back to part 2 of the undercarriage work here. Now, if for some reason YouTube has tricked you into clicking on this video, my name is Matt, and you can find part 1 and the other videos on this thing in the video description. First order of business here is to get these 2 spring guides out. The big issue here is that the bolts are rounded off. I didn't have any room to work in here, which is why I removed the spring. So now that the spring's out, I have a tiny bit more room, not a lot. You can't really like heat it up and spray oil in there because it's just tight against the spring guide and there's not any hole for the oil to penetrate through. And would you look at that cotter pin is just holding on for dear life. I think first thing I'm going to try though, since this is going to be the hardest one, let me start with this one and I'm going to heat it up pretty good. This is the correct size nut, but it's just, since it's so rounded, it barely fits on there. So I'm going to heat it up, put this on, hammer it on, and then try to break it off. Penetrating oil is not going to fit. It's just going to soak into the dirt around here. That's pretty warm. There's not enough space to hammer in here naturally. Oh, there goes my socket. Yeah, that socket fell in the undercarriage somewhere. I'm not going to be able to find that ever. All right, now, let's go. Yeah, so this isn't budging. Even though it wasn't slipping on here, it's just not moving. I think the best thing to do right now is going to be just to cut this off, torch this head off, both of these heads off. Then I can remove this guide. This guide is very thick, so I'll have a lot of space underneath where I can heat this thing up and spray penetrating oil in, and then I can weld a nut to the top and hopefully spin it back out. Oh, that's burning through my glove. Oh yeah, ouch, ouch, there we go. You just don't want to burn through the bottom bracket. Now that's just quite spicy through my glove there. I think she's about free here. Oh yeah, she wants to come off. You know, I actually own a pair of welding gloves, but they're way over there somewhere. And oh, actually this is them right here. Whoopsies. Oh, all right. No damage to that. Probably not good for you. There's actually some threads left on here. Let's see if I can get it started on it. Oh. Yeah, it's going on. Well, that was just completely blind. I couldn't see a thing. That doesn't sound good. All right, well, I mean, I've tried welding to this thing about 5 or 6 times. It's just pulling metal off. I can't get a good weld to it because there's no space in here to get to it. I've been soaking it in penetrating oil. It's not coming out, and I already kind of knew better. When I had the socket on here, before I rounded it off all the way, I was putting a significant amount of force and it was not cracking. So at this point, you know, short of wasting more time, I'm just going to cut it off and start drilling it out. And halfway when I start drilling it out, I'm going to try to use an extractor on it. It's pretty tight to work in here. All right, I got a decent drill hole in there. So it's about, I don't know, 1/2 inch to 3/4. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna heat it to just cherry red, this bolt, and I'm gonna put an extractor in there. I got one right here. All right. Now the trick with these, a little tap, and then turn it a tiny bit. Give it another little tap. And if you have a really crappy one of these, it's going to snap off in here and cause you way more trouble. Hopefully that doesn't happen. If I can't get it loose with this, I'm just going to drill it all the way through. I don't want to snap it off in there. Alright, so I used the torch and I kind of just blew out the rest of that stud that was sticking out. It's only about 1/2 of an inch or 3/4 of an inch down, so that's how I could get away with it. And it's not a blind hole. So now I have this is a 1/2 inch tap, which is a 5/8 inch hole. So I'm just going to run this through and get the slag out that's stuck to the threads, and then I'll run the 5/8 inch tap through, and hopefully that clears it up. Alright, I got the 5/8 inch tap in there right now. I think I got it in. Going good. So this was a little bit rough, but to tell you the truth, I've had way worse. Two projects before this, I was rebuilding an ATV that had been used in like a salt mine, and like every fastener was just completely frozen in there. So this, yeah. So it's holding good. I've torqued it down pretty good, and it's not jiggling around in there. Not going to be as strong as it was originally, but you know, with how much space I have to work in here and how rusted these bolts are, I think this is the best it's going to get. Alright, so I'm not going to mess with the other tricks on the next bolt. I'm just going to do the same thing because it's so rough working down here. So once again, I'm going to take the die grinder or the angle grinder and I'm going to cut this off flush. Then I'm going to get the stud hot and I'm going to take the torch in and I'm just going to start blowing out the inside. And then once I get it down a little bit, then I'll just start shooting straight through to blow through the hole, and then I can just retap it again. Try not to hit the camera. Yeah, just gotta push down and it'll just pop all the stuff out. It's going in pretty good. This is really difficult in this blind situation here where I can't see in the hole. So there's a little bit of back and forth with running the 1/2 inch tap. Oh my goodness. Running the 1/2 inch tap through to, and then when I couldn't go any further, then I would get the torch back out and blow the slag out and then keep running it through. I think we're good here now though. So this was the most rounded one and I cannot get a good connection on there to even torque on it. The other two over there, those weren't as rounded and I was able to torque really hard on them before I gave up. So this one I'm actually going to try to weld a nut onto and see if I can get it off that way first. So I can just hold this mask kind of. Come on. Well, it's a good weld at least. Oh, what was that? Oh, it's either my weld breaking or a bolt's moving. Oh, well, it was definitely a good weld. Unfortunately, yeah, that's pretty much where we were at on the other bolts too. It's just, you know, after doing this for a while, you know when you're about to break a bolt. That's why I stopped on the other ones. So that's fine. We'll just do the same thing with the torch. Alright, that one's done. Got a little too enthusiastic with the torch. So basically what happened there is the threads weren't cleaned off enough with the torch, and I tried to get a 1/2 inch tap in there and I eventually got that through, but I couldn't get the 5/8 inch tap started. So then I went back with the torch and I was cleaning it out and I accidentally burned through, but that's fine. I did get it re-tapped and it does hold a bolt to a good amount of torque, so I think that'll be just fine. Just got to go a little slow when you're using the torch on that. Got the new arms in. They look straight. compare these to the old ones here. Just a little bit of a difference. It's actually, the surprising thing is how much more this one's bowed out. So that would really explain why the track was, you know, a fair amount looser. So this looks like it's pretty old. Probably older than me. Let's see if it has any markings on it. This has been sitting on a shelf for a long time, I think. The only writing on here is just SOC and then the size and HS. So I don't know what brand it is. I'm guessing it's probably made in America since it doesn't have where it's from. I don't know what SOC is. Maybe the SOC is the name of the tool company. You know, for some reason I was kind of expecting these all to close up, but this isn't the case. It just closes up on the inside. All right, so it's in there, so I should be able to just tighten it and then turn it to clean the threads. We'll see. The only reason I'm attempting this, by the way, is there was a lot of material on the threads still. It just needs to be slightly cleaned up. If it was actually stripped, I would have been more worried about it, but there was lots of metal left. All right, so the thread's cleaned up a little bit. You know, it's not beautiful looking. I think it's gonna work though. In the occasion, at least I know it's not gonna mess up the threads on the new spring. And worst case is if it for some reason does break, I can always, it's not that big of a deal to replace it. You just have to pull these arms off. Going on easy. Not a lot of wobble, that's a good sign. Is that nut gonna be a problem? I don't think so. The other track had like, I think this much space, so. By the way, see if you can guess which two are the old bent ones and which are the new straight ones. It's kind of hard to tell. I might lose track of them. So there is like super duper thick rust scale on this thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and use the old scaler for this. And I basically just want to get all the stuff busted off, then I'm gonna vacuum it out. I think we're pretty good to go here. I'm going to go ahead and prime and paint in here just because this is all bare, well, somewhat bare, and I don't want to get more rust in here, so we'll do that before I put the spring in. Actually, I should probably pull that poor old little cotter pin out too, get that all cleaned up. So let me do that real quick. This was about 3 days away from failing anyways. There's something wrong. This pin is not, I don't think this is the right pin. I'm pretty sure that's not the right pin now that I look at it. Look at that. And it's not long enough. That's why that cotter pin was falling out. And I don't know, is this even the right... This thing is not the same on the other side. I'm going to have to check the parts diagram. I think we have some kind of issue going on here. Yeah, I got the parts manual here. So these actually looks like the right end piece over here. It's the same shape. So I think this is right. The issue I see over here is if you look at this straight on, typically you want you'd probably want this to come straight up instead of bent. And because it's bent, there's so much slop in here. So I think this is the right pin, maybe. It's pretty loose in here. Probably doesn't matter though for a spring. But I think it's just not, these are so far apart that it's not going through anymore. Over on this side, there's just this thing, which the parts diagram shows kind of a similar piece over here. That might be okay, I don't know. But this is the same pin in here. It's coming in through the back. This side's bad. So I'm gonna take this side out too, and then try to figure out what to go here. So the engine is sitting right here, right? It's pushing down on the spring. So it's not even really contacting right here. So in normal operation, the engine is sitting on the spring, right? And the spring's pushing down against the track frame, so it's all secure. But I'm remembering back when I was taking it apart and I had the engine off and the winch on the back, and it was so heavy that the entire transmission, the transmission case and all that, flipped backwards until the winch hit the pavement over there. So now I'm thinking, if you're going up a hill, especially with a winch on the back, a steep hill, is that going to pull this whole spring up against these two pins? And if that's the case, then these two pins are the only thing that's keeping the engine from breaking free. And if the engine breaks free when you're going up a hill, this whole thing is going to flip around backwards and smash whatever poor sucker's sitting on right there. So I'm wondering, maybe I should weld some kind of safety system, like to the track frame, to somewhere on the engine, just in case these pins fail. Because, I mean, this is, what, 1/2 of an inch? And, I should probably also replace these two. I don't know. This seems kind of like it was close to falling apart anyways. I mean, this pin was about to pull out. So, I mean, I don't know. I just don't want to get smashed. I guess that's the goal here. I looked through some parts diagrams, and it appears that this style of, I guess you'd call this like a spring stop or something, it seems to be unique to the 7U, which is the wide track D4. For the 6U and others, I see this normal. This is like the more normal one. So apparently at some point they lost it or broke it, and then they just replaced it with that, which I'm sure it'll be fine. How heavy do you suppose this is? Pretty heavy. Yeah, my friend with the stick welder has clearly been in here. Something happened here, obviously. Probably whatever also happened to the blade frame. I mean, look at that hole. So that's nice. Let's check the other side. This one's also quite bent. This side doesn't look bad. This side looks pretty bad. These, I don't know. This does not look like something that would come out of the factory. So maybe, I don't know what happened. It's like the whole engine got ripped out or something. I'm not sure. This isn't wobbling around in here now. It's actually somewhat flush. I guess we'll call that okay. Let's do the other side now. This thing is very twisted. It is actually completely broken through right here. I'm just trying to get it somewhat flat so I can patch it better. Oh, I guess this side is electrically isolated from the other side because I have the same mount point that I was welding on before. I got the top bridged. It looks like most of the material this is all kind of hogged out right here. Most of the material was off the top. So I'm going to try to patch that in, and then maybe a little bit in this corner. The way I do it, and I don't know if this is the best way, but it's always worked for me, is I take a little aluminum rod and I just spot in little chunks and slowly build it up. There we go. Well, it ain't pretty, that's for sure. But that's about as good as I can get in there with a grinder in this angle. One thing I noticed, since this is obviously something custom that someone's done to repair it, this actually doesn't fit in here. So that would explain why they went over to the other style. See if I can do this without breaking my wrist here. Probably not. this isn't my finest work, but I think it'll be fine. All this does is when the spring comes up, it just stops it from flying out of here. I know I talked a little bit earlier about like a safety chain or something on the engine. I think what I'm going to do though is once it's back in, I'm going to get the skid plate on. I'll see how that, I don't remember how that all connects. There's probably a way to attach it to the skid plate for a safety. So I'll check that out once it's all back together. Get ready to paint this in here. Check out how pitted this is. This is what the needler or the scaler removed. It's not sure how well you can tell, but it is just, there's like gouges removed from the rust. Check out this thing. This is the spring retainer. I haven't brushed this yet, but this looks like something that was pulled off the ocean. Got everything painted here. I'm gonna have to go and clean off these, like this surface and that surface there. So painted in here. And in case I didn't mention it, I painted this because once the spring's in there, you're not gonna be able to paint it. You can get a good coverage on it. Ooh, I got some drippage there and there. So put the spring back in. I guess I'll start with that. By the way, this is kind of why I'm holding out for good painting weather, is because I painted this 2 or 3 days ago and it's still a little bit soft. And it's just so moist in here. There's like half the time there's like water running through here. So I'm kind of waiting for a little bit drier before I do this. That's relief. Oh, it's upside down. You know, before I put this in, I'm gonna get some 5/8 washers. Just because this hole is just rough and it'll give me a little more safety. And this is so long that it would be good to have at least a couple washers before I put the pin in. I figure you probably want to get this surface cleaned out in here, so this is all ready to go. First step, I'm assuming, is the spring. And it does go in one way, so this is going to be the worst part. No easy way to do this. I guess if you had a friend, that would be easier. I don't have any friends though. It's hitting idler. That's not a good sign. Come on now. All right, so for anti-seize, you probably see this stuff at the auto parts store, the Permatex. I like Napa, AutoZone, everyone has it. It does not work very well. I mean, it works okay for cars, but for off-road stuff like tractors, lawn mowers, that kind of stuff, it just doesn't work very well because it gets washed out. So this is the stuff I've been using here around here. It works pretty well. There's different brands, like you don't have to use Loctite, but the marine grade stuff seems to work pretty well. So that's what I'll be using on this thing. All right, well, spring's in. Guess I'm mostly out of the danger zone of getting smashed by it. Hindsight being 20/20, I should have greased the threads on this before I put this on. Really, I just don't want this thing to seize up again. So, and I'm guessing you probably want some grease on this thing. I don't know, probably doesn't matter too much. It doesn't seem to be lining up very well. Yeah, it's not going to be fun getting these aligned. I loosened these just to get the bolts in here. You know, this is not going together very well. And I'm wondering if when these arms got bent on the other one, if it messed up the bearing and the shaft on this idler. So I'm going to be very careful when I do this here. but it just seems like it should go together easier than this. It's kind of fighting every step of the way. All right, I got the bottom one somewhat tight. I forgot about this thing completely. I guess I probably should have used a longer bolt on top. This is not going to fit in here. So I might hold off on this. I just want to get the thing tensioned down, and then I can take one bolt at a time and I can get a longer bolt and put this in. But all right, I think it's on here okay. I got the lock washers on both of these bolts. Like I said, I'll come back and I'll put that loop over the top. And these are all tight, and it's a lot tighter. It's not wobbling around. That's probably a good thing, I would think. You can see there's quite the wear channel warning right there. But I guess I'll just have to see how this operates. I'm a little bit worried, like I said, since these were bent, and maybe it screwed up this, like the bearings and the shaft in there. So I guess I'll just see how it tracks. If there's an issue with the tracking, I think this is going to be my first suspect. But I'm going to go ahead. So this is still loose, so I'm going to try to tighten this out and tension this track out and see if I can do it. Unfortunately, I don't have a wrench, the proper wrench, so I'm going to have to use some really crappy channel locks, and there's not a really good way to get in here because the blade frame's in the way. It is turning, it's just not a lot of fun. Tell you what, I'm going to leave the camera right here, and I'm going to take a little video, a few seconds every couple minutes while I'm tightening this thing. And then hopefully later on I can determine if it's actually tightening. It's getting a little harder to turn now. All right, well, I got both tracks tensioned about the same. So you can see they both have about the same amount of droop now. No longer rubbing over there. And I did tighten these bolts down. So I'll run it for a while, and then I should probably actually check the spec to see how much droop you're expected to have. It needs to be tightened a little bit, but I'll do them both at the same time. All right, final thing on this video is going to be lubrication, I guess. So on these front idlers, there's this fitting here, and I did a fair amount of research on this. So let me show you what I got. So these are the same fittings. These are generic fittings. You can get these off McMaster for like $5 each, or the name brand ones are like $20. But these are button head fittings. These are meant to be used with low pressure grease. So the grease that Cat recommends is double-aught grease, which basically has the consistency of honey. It's very, very thin. The problem with it is you can only get it in like a 5-gallon tub, which I do not want to buy. I did a fair amount of research on the Antique Caterpillar site, and a lot of people were recommending this. So this is deer cornhead grease. And this stuff is thick, but once it starts moving, it gets really, really thin, and it has the same consistency. And you can apply this with a grease gun. But the thing is, you do not want to push really high pressure grease into these fittings because they will blow the seals out in all the rollers. So you got to be very, very careful. I got this grease gun here. This is a low pressure grease gun. It's actually adjustable. You can set you can pull this over around, and it's on the low pressure setting right now. Even with this, it's like still, I think, 1,000 PSI. So by feel, you don't want to push too hard. And then over here I have a attachment for the button head fitting right there. So it slides in there. So it's going to be by feel on those button head fittings. So both idlers and the top roller on the other side were those button head fittings. That's what I'll do. I'll replace all the fittings and then I'll re-grease them, and I'll do that in a second here. This one and then all the bottom rollers are this style, which I've already taken this one off, but I can show you. Oh, yeah, and we got oil in there. So basically all these, I'm just going to check that there's oil in there. This almost looks like ATF. Kind of a reddish fluid, but so I'll just double check that. I mean, I think they can develop leaks, and if it's leaking, then there's not going to be any oil in there. Over here I have a grease fitting. Not really sure what this is for, but I will replace this. This looks, I mean, I would not want to reuse that. This also looks like it's never been greased, but it's coming off. Okay, grease inside of here looks good, but there's a lot of dirt I gotta get out of here. Sits pretty low in there versus the old one. That's why this old one was longer, but it's actually not hitting these sides aren't hitting, so it's tight in there. So this plug is right where the other grease fitting was, and if this was on the other track frame, this would have the grease fitting in it. So these have got to be, I wonder if this is a pass-through. It'll just come out here when I guess I'll find out when I get this off. There should be grease in here. If there is, then I should be able to pump it with grease and get the old stuff out. Yep, there's grease in there. All right, I've been pumping a little bit and then I'm feeling some resistance. So everything I read said to stop at that point. So that's what I'm gonna do. And I'll just call that good, I guess. So I did not see any grease come out of there as I was hoping. But I mean, I might need to grease it a few times. I can run it for a while, then grease it, run it for a while. There is a lot of really old grease in this thing that needs to get work its way out. And the last thing that I would qualify as undercarriage would be, you see there's a grease fitting right here. And then over here they've removed it and put in a plug. I'm not sure why. I'm pretty sure this needs to be greased. So I will take this plug off, replace that, grease these, and that should be it. Yep, not tight. It's a 9/16 head, which I don't think I've ever seen in the grease fitting before. I'm probably not going to have the correct size for this. Yeah, that's a big one. But you can see that's just, I don't know what that is, mud, solid grease. It's not looking good in there. It's just really hard grease. Oh my goodness, has this ever been greased? I'm considering taking these bolts off. I'm worried about what I'm going to find in there though, if you know what I mean. Oh, that's going right down my sleeve. I'm just feeling in here. Oh, I can get a bearing out. Let's see what that looks like. Hey, that's actually not bad. It's just super dry, but the groove's still in there. I mean, it could be a lot worse. At least there's a bearing and it's not just turned into dust. All right, well, unfortunately, I cannot find the grease fitting, the original one, and I don't have this. This is like a really weird large size. I don't have that on hand. So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to put a new grease fitting in, and I'm just going to shoot a ton of grease in and hopefully blow all the dirt out. And I should see grease coming out on the sides. And if that happens on both sides, then I'll call it good. Otherwise, I'm going to have to take these off and figure something out. That's going to be it for this video, I guess. And I'm pretty much done with the undercarriage until later, after paint, and I drive it around for a while, and I find any other issues. But just want to show one more time, this new spring looks great in here, and it's all tensioned up initially. Well, I know it's been like over 2 weeks since I posted the video. I apologize. I feel like this video is not going to be very long. I didn't really do too much, but if you've been watching my Instagram, I did tease something a couple times, and that's a little bit why I'm a few days behind schedule. But anyway, the undercarriage, I'm going to call that done for now, and I think I'm ready for paint. So it's going to be a matter of rolling everything out when there's a good day of weather, which is few and far between right now. Pressure washing everything very, very well, and then getting ready for paint. While I am waiting for the weather to improve, I'll probably work on the radiator. I'm still a little bit worried about that because it just doesn't look very nice. It's very, very rusty. But that needs to be done obviously before I can drive it around. I can start it without it, but I don't want to run it for very long. So with all that said, guys, thanks a lot for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll be back soon.